everybody. My name is Andy Chan, and I'm an RCIC IRB. Welcome back to my channel. I haven't done a video regarding what I've done for the BC PNP calculations in quite some time. So just to summarize, it's a Excel model that I created way back when I was studying, and I first I created it as just a study aid, so that if you key in your applicant's language scoring, work experience, and age, and those kind of things, it goes off and it calculates your various scores for you. For example, your CRS score, federal skilled worker scoring, whether you qualify for federal skilled trade or the Canadian experience class. Then what I started doing is I started adding individual PNPs to it. So the subject of today's video is for BC PNP. And again, you just key in your data once and it calculates those things out for you. It is almost April, so I haven't had a chance to refresh the scoring for the other PNPs, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do that next little while. My next one will probably be I should focus on the federal one, but my next one is probably Ontario because I'm helping a candidate out there to analyze everything. And again, I've got all these calculations for the various streams. The change to the tier codes was such a drastic change that I've got to go back and clean up all these other ones. So again, I tried to design a system where it's evaluating PNP scoring across the country. So it obviously takes a little bit of effort. The reason why I'm doing this one today now is that I'm helping somebody in BC, and I've been keeping this model privately, but with this particular person and another one in Ontario, I thought it's time that I created another video on it because I do have a lot of friends that have been using this model themselves, and because of the change of tier codes, 4 or 5 months ago, it's obviously gone a little stale. I'll go through the high level changes of the BC PNP, but what I want to mention something really quick. I did the CPD online through in seminars. Great information. The presenter is named Tiffany Chi. She did a great job in explaining everything. So I do highly suggest and recommend if you're an RCIC taking this taking these CPDRs. At the end of her presentation, she's got 4 case studies. So through some liberties, obviously, I'm using those exact 4 case studies, keying into the Excel model, and in turn showing you how the BC score is derived. But not only that, the CRS and the CEC and the other qualifications too. So I am trying to take the example Tiffany used in her presentation, but just show you how you can use a spreadsheet to calculate it. And not only that, but calculate the other scoring too, because I think it gives you as an RC a much better chance of explaining what are the other alternatives. And again, if your practice is wide reaching, once I clear up the other tabs, then you can maybe have a discussion if another PNP program in another province could be considered an option. So anyways, let's jump right into it. Here's the PDF file for the BC PNP. It was just updated, I think, at the end of January. So let me just go down to page 51. And this is the new scoring. They've adjusted some of the scoring, and they've actually made it a lot more straightforward in a lot of ways. The old scoring, for example, directly related work experience, they had different points based on the knock level. But now the work experience for 40 points is solely based on the work experience of the NOC code that you're applying under. The tier code, sorry, I had to catch myself. The tier code that you're applying under. So the directly rated work experience, that calculation is based on this table. Um, in my past videos, I explained how in Excel I go about doing this. I just enter it in as a table, and I use a lookup formula in Excel. Really straightforward, and I don't want to go off in the weeds in this particular video because I do want to show how to calculate the same four case studies Tiffany used. But if I go like too far into it, it's really time consuming and it's a little confusing. But do look in my channel for my past content and you see how I'll go about doing it. Okay, so it goes from 0 to 20 points, and then 10 additional points for work experience in Canada, and if you're currently working full time in BC for that employer. These are this calculation is automatically calculated in the Excel file. So is this. This I just have a little checkbox to give a prompt whether that is the case or not. I don't have. It's a little more difficult to create logic for that. Okay, so that's the first. That's the first section. That's the first 40 points. The highest level of education. Which page was that on? 55, I think. Oh no, it's 50. Oh, it is 55. So these are the points now. Post-grad certificate or diploma. You'll see in the drop-down, I use the same categories as the express entry. And the wording is slightly different, but I think the wording is two diplomas with one as a postgraduate. So the wording is a little different, but the meaning I'm using it to be treated as the same. So, yeah, I've got a really old copy of the exam day test prep. Exam day test prep from exam preparation. Kyle wrote it. It's a great book, but it's obviously quite thrashed. I believe the term used in express entry is 2 or plus credentials. One was completed after a 3-year program. So I'm using that as the same definition as a postgrad cert or diploma. It makes sense to me at least. Okay, the next section. So the next section is language proficiency. So it's under 40 points now, and they're now giving points if you have a minimum CLB4 right across both languages. So that's new. The hourly wage of the job offer, and I will scroll down there. Let me see. Oh, this is let me just go down. Hourly wage of the job offer. It's a huge table. So it's points system based on this. I think it used to be based on an annual salary, but I much rather they use this because there's in the Ontario, I think high tech stream, I think they use an hourly too. So because I have Ontario, it's easier to integrate. So the points calculation is on this table here. Okay. Oh, let me just go back. I think I skipped one section, which is a little unique, and it is the directly related work experience. As far as I can recall, BC is the only PNP program where if it's part-time work, it's automatically counted as half. Whereas, and I just did just did a procedural fairness letter. The procedural fairness letter is calculated in months too, but to calculate part-time work, we're actually using hours and then doing our math to count the number of months. But in BC, if it's part-time, it's automatically counted as half a month. that's reflected in the calculation that I have for the BC report in the Excel model. Let's see, hourly wage. So I covered everything. Oh, the areas within BC. This used to be a really big table, and they've thankfully simplified it a lot. Here, so it's 0 points if you're in the Metro Vancouver region, 5 just in the cities just right outside of that, and 15 for everywhere else. This section down here is new, meaning if you've lived or had studied in one of the other areas, you get an additional 10 points. And I what I've done here is I've also got I added a checkbox simply because I don't really have anything to determine where you studied it. I just ask for your level of education, but I don't really have a calculation of, you know, where you've obtained your bachelor's degree or anything else. So I did ramble on a little bit, but again, just to summarize, the new calculation, a much simpler calculation, is on page 51 of the BC PNP SIRS report. There's only 5 sections, and let me just show you really quick the Excel file. This is the BC report. So what I've done is for my own sanity, I added the page numbers where I reference the BC report and then I add everything up. So page 53 is the directly rated work experience. Page 55 is the highest level of education. 56 is the professional designations, which actually I did not cover. They added a section for any trade they had any trade certificate before, but they've added these ones to the dental hygienist, early childhood educators, health and pharmacy techs. So you'll see this in a drop down too. So if you qualify, if your candidate qualified for any one of these, is it 10 points or 5 points? I think it's five additional points. But anyways, that's reflected here. That's reflected in this simple calculation here. Then yeah, so everything else is, I think, pretty straightforward. Again, it's out of 200. So as you can see, there's nothing in here right now, right? So and you don't key in anything. So the idea is, and if you're not sure how the Excel file works, do watch my past content. But what I try to do is try to use yellow cells as data entry areas, and through a series of calculation, it calculates everything else. So I just showed you the BC report. So here's the report for the CRS. Again, everything's zeroed out. Federal Skill Worker, Federal Skill Trade, and Canadian Experience Class. All right, so everything here is driven by formula. What I did is I use a gray cell to indicate that you shouldn't really touch it, because the yellow cells indicate data entry, the gray cells indicate that it's a formula-driven value. All right, so let's get into the first case study that, again, Tiffany used. And again, highly recommend that you go and take this course. And actually, I should have mentioned this before. In my past videos, it was to show the Excel file. I expressly stated, well, this is really meant for other RCICs. But through demonstrating this, I hope to show that if potential candidates that this is how I go about analyzing every client. So I haven't, I haven't gone to the point where I'm comfortable showing the mechanics to everybody. And you know what? To be perfectly honest, I am horrible at Excel formatting. So even I get lost when I go through this like a second or third time. If I don't use a particular module, Like for example, if I don't use, if I don't have a reason to look in Nova Scotia, I forget how it works. So even me as an author, if I have trouble, getting through the Excel formatting, I totally understand you as an RCIC if you get lost in this. So when you take this file, focus on the areas that you want to focus on. If you don't want to use it, just hide that particular tag, that particular tab. So I could use some help cleaning up the formatting of the Excel file because at the end of the day, the only parts that I present to a client are these reports. And I explained to them how I came about calculating everything out. But when I present something like this to a client, they see the scoring and they can cross reference back to the PDF. And I have a much more intelligent conversation with them that way. Uh, if you're one of my friends that are using this file, thank you very much for putting up with me. If you have any ideas on how I can clean it up, please let me know. Okay, so let me just get into the first case study now. So just to summarize where we're at, I'm going to be using the case studies from this CPD on the British Columbia PNP program. So let's look in the first case study. So Emily graduated from Farleigh Dickinson University in May 2021 with an MBA, and it issued I guess a 3-year postgraduate work permit. So that implies that her program was at least 2 years plus a day plus more than a day. She's currently working as a restaurant manager in Surrey and having been promoted from Restaurant Supervisor in February 2021. And I'm using a lock-in date of November 2022. I just want to make a quick comment on this. This is from the case study. I'm reading in a couple extra things. So she was working as restaurant supervisor while she was working on a study permit, and then so maximum of 20 hours per week. I'm going to make that assumption in the calculations just for demonstration purposes. And I also want to show that how it doesn't qualify for the Canadian experience class. So I'll show those calculations. Okay, so she earns now $24 an hour. Her lowest language score is CLB 7. I'll show how the model takes in your IELTS, your self-pip score, or like there's 4 different type of tests. So you're not keying in the CLB just as a quick time saver. She has no other work experience, and in the presentation, her CPD in the CPD video was calculated as 83 points. I needed to add a couple additional other pieces of information, and that she's single and her date of birth is November 20th, 1998, because the model does calculate the CRS, federal skilled worker, so on and so on. So let me just show you the model really quick. And let me show you the model. So I started keying in some of it already. So I'll key in the rest, and I'll key in the rest. I'll start keying in everything, and I'll show you how the calculations look. So I've keyed everything in. And again, I'm using yellow cells to indicate where my data entry goes. As I mentioned before, my formatting isn't great. So for my friends that are using this file, hopefully you guys can come up with even more ideas where I can make it look better. I originally just used all white cells, and even I was getting lost actually. So anyways, I mentioned before, I'm using yellow cells for data entry and gray background cells to indicate what's formula driven. Okay, so her name is Emily. Her marital status, I'm assuming, is single. I've got a drop down here corresponding to this different CRS options. I scroll down. I keyed in her IELTS score, and I'm keying in her IELTS score because I'm accepting one of the 4 language tests. In the case study that Tiffany's using, she mentioned a minimum CLB of 7. So in this Excel model, I'm taking your language score. Again, there's a drop down, and I'm converting it to a CLB score. So let me just show you this one section. It's using formulas, is calculating the CLB. In BCPNP, I'm using the minimum CLB and deriving a point score. So let me just show you that page, language proficiency. She got a CLB of 7, which is the minimum, and she's getting 20 points. All right. So that's how this is getting derived. I'm not going to explain how I came up with these formulas. That's I did this last year, so, and I want to keep this particular video rolling along. Okay, so she doesn't have a second language test, so I left that as 0. Her birth date is December. I'm using December 20th, 1998, as I mentioned in the previous slide. She's got a master's degree in BC. She doesn't have a ECA. And this is, I'm going to remove this one because the old system used to get 4 points for BCPNP. And actually, Tiffany mentioned this in her video, in that in the first case, it wasn't really relevant to imply that she got her ECA. I'm pretty new, but if it was my client, I would just automatically say, even if you're not applying for BCPNP, you should still get your ECA done. I would tell any client that, because for the CRS, I mean, if she applies for express entry or any other province, it's just really handy to have that around. And actually, let me just, while I'm here, I want to see if there's any dependence. Okay, so I can actually just remove this. So the version that you'll see, I'll probably want removing this cell. Okay, let's scroll down. This drop down is the professional designation. I'm using these codes, and let me just go back. Tiffany did a great job of explaining this. These codes are for additional 5 points for trade certification. And it's this page. So if you're applicant, or if you have any of these qualifications, that's an additional 5, I think, right? Yeah, eligible professional designation. Okay, that's an additional 5 points. So that's where this drop down is for. Okay, the province of, I've mentioned the province of education, that drives something else. That drives another bonus points. Okay, so let me scroll down. Okay, the primary knock code. I'm using restaurant and food service manager. Okay, and she's currently employed with that employer, and they've given her a job offer. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. It's this next section that I think, well, frankly, I put in the most work, and it's so far been the most useful to me. As a side note, last week I had a procedural fairness letters helping another RCIC. This particular person had 9 different jobs in her history. She was in the film industry. So they were contract by contract, I guess, much like a university prof, but even shorter. So she had overlapping work, different knock codes. But I used this grid, and it really helped identify what the issues are. And the number I came up with actually matched the IRCC. So, anyway, so here's the grid, and let me just put up side by side. Let me just go back to the slide deck really quick, just as a reminder. So she graduated from Farleigh Dickinson University in May 2021. She's working as a restaurant manager in Surrey, BC. She previously worked as a restaurant supervisor. All right, now she works and she makes $24 an hour. So I took that data and I keyed it into here. And I made a bit of an assumption too. So I'm presuming that she worked when she started school as a food supervisor, and she worked 20 hours per week, which is the maximum under her study permit. She was not in Canada in a work permit, so I'm indicating that as a false. She was promoted to the manager role, and I'm using the tier code restaurant and food service manager there, starting from February 1st, 2021 to May. And again, I'm coding this as 20 hours because she was still in her study permit at that point in time. It's after that that I'm giving her 30 hours in that same role. And then she's inside Canada under a work permit. All right, so that's the data for it. I click on this. I coded a little macro to calculate continuous work, because in federal skilled worker you need 1 year of continuous work in your primary knock code. So I did this before, and actually I'm just going to save this really quick, and I'm going to click this. Oops, that's a breakpoint. I'm going to take this out. All right. So in her primary knock 60030, her longest continuous duration of work is 2,800 hours. Okay, my apologies. That was not supposed to appear there. Okay, that's 2,800 hours. How do I know that? It's all based on these fields over here. And let me just walk through this really quick. You'll see different calculations of work hours here. What I've done is for the various programs in Canada, I'm calculated separately what the work hours in for the last 12 months, and that's for Quebec, 18 months, 2 years, 30 months for Alberta, 3 years for the Canadian experience class, 5 years for federal skilled trade, and 10 years for federal skilled worker. Note that I'm calculating the hours for Canadian experience class, but I should be only counting this one, the very last row of data. So here's, I'm sort of jumping, my apologies. So let me just go down to Canadian experience class really quick. And I've got 25, just under 2,600 hours. And I'm only counting this one because these two rows of data, even though there's just over 1,100 hours, she wasn't on a work permit in Canada. So I've got a bunch of other formulas. So these formulas just count the number of hours. I've got other formulas that filter out what program they're applicable to. And that's why you've got a formula like this. Okay. So this table is probably, to me, the most useful. Well, actually, the language scoring, how I convert from a language score to a CLB or to a point system, that's actually quite helpful too. Okay, so I've showed you the data that I've keyed in, and I think it ends around here. Oh, so the other thing is she's making $24 an hour, and her area of employment is within the Metro Vancouver area, and she has not spent either 1 year of education or work outside the Metro Vancouver area. So I already showed you a part of it, but here's the BC report. Okay, let's go right up to the top. She's got 19 hours of full-time work. That's 4 points. So let me just go to that page. And it's never simple when you're in a rush, like I said. Is it this one? Yeah. So it's less than 2 years. So she's got four points in that knock. And it won't show up in this example, but the directly related work experience, I filter out other knock codes because of that. Okay, but I don't want to confuse the system, confuse the issue, but she's getting 4 points for that. Okay, so 19 months of work. 1 year of related experience in Canada, she qualifies for that. She's currently working for the employer, and that's 10 points and 10 points. She's got a master's degree, which is 22 points, and that is over here, 22 points. Okay. Okay, she completed it in BC, 8 points. And then down here, eligible professional designation. And this is driven by, so it's driven by this drop down. Oops, no, sorry, this one. So again, these codes are driven by the availability of a trade certification or one of these certifications, and it's worth 5 points. Okay, so let me just go up there. So sorry, I'm bouncing around a bit, but I'm trying to show what we keyed in for the scenario, what the BC PNP says she's qualifying for, and how I'm calculating. So I'm jumping between various screens. All right, so she doesn't get any points for that. I already showed you because of her CLB, she scored really high on reading and writing, but since BC Calc is minimum, she got CLB of 7, and she's getting 20 points. And that is, hopefully I can find it down here. She got CLB 7, she's getting 20 points. There. And again, this is just a formula. You don't key in anything. Once you've keyed in the IELTS score, all the formulas take over. All right. She doesn't have a French test, so she doesn't get any points for that. She makes $24 an hour, and this is driven by this table. That's easy to find actually. $24 an hour is way down here. She should be getting 9 points. Let's go back up to my Excel file. She's getting 9 points. Her area of employment is in Surrey, so she's not getting any points for that. And I'll show you page 61. This is where she's either been in school in the past outside of Greater Vancouver or has 1 year of work experience. And page 61, just as a cross-reference, is coming from here. So her area of employment is in Surrey, so she's getting 0 points, and she's never worked outside of there, so she doesn't qualify for any of these points. My grand total is 83, which matches what was shown in the in Tiffany's video. Okay, so that's the first part. The next part is this. I already showed a glimpse of that. So if you're curious what her CRS score is, based on current data entry, she's getting 463 points. How do I know this? The Excel macros, the Excel formulas calculate out everything. So she's getting 463 points. Federal skilled worker, she's getting 74 points. And I showed a macro for the work experience again, because it's 1 year continuous work. I'm going to make sure that she's qualified. So she's getting 74. Federal skilled trade, none. The knock codes don't match. If I had to pay myself a dime for every time I say knock code, the tier grouping. So these are the brand new tier groupings, and there's I think I have a link. So if you could follow one of these links, you can see what the new tier groups are. All right, and the last section is the Canadian experience class. Okay, so in the Canadian experience class, there's no scoring, but I'm showing that she does qualify for a CEC based on a minimum language of CLB of 10. She's able to get 7 as a minimum. Therefore, she's able to qualify because the minimum language scoring for tier 0 or 1, which is the restaurant manager tier code. She meets the minimum requirements, and she needed 12 months of work experience. She's got 19.75. So, to summarize, I took the same case study that was presented in that CPD session, keyed it all in here in the various cells, my confusing cells, and especially the work experience. I keyed in with the correct criteria so that I'm generating a report that says she's got 83 points for BC PNP. Plus, I'm also automatically calculating her CRS scoring, and I'm using the same categories as a report that's generated for the ITA. 463 points. Federal skilled worker 74 points. Nothing for skilled trade, and she qualifies for the Canadian experience class. So that is all integrated, all in one go. Okay. So I'll do the other I'll do the other 3 scenarios, and apologies that I'm speaking so fast, but I realize this is probably going to go well over an hour. So anyways, on to the next scenario.
A few moments later.
So case study number 2. Ajay is a software engineer from India, over 10 years of experience. He got an offer of employment for a position in Victoria, $58 an hour, never been to Canada before. He got an ECA assessment, and his lowest language score is CLB 7. I had to add these 2 extra pieces of information. He's married, and date of birth is September 1989. Okay, so let's show you the calculations. So let me show you the data entry for AJ. So in this scenario, just for I added the fact that he has an accompanying spouse. I am specifying his IELTS score, a 7 across the board with an IELTS score of 6.5 in speaking. No French score. I'm saying that his birth date is September 20th, 1989. Since in this scenario he has 20 years of experience. So his age is 33, and I put in as early validation check what his CRS points are. So I'm allocating 80. With a spouse. If he didn't have a spouse, it'd be 85. But that is all taken into consideration in this long formula. Okay. His education is 3 more years on a single credential. Wasn't in Canada. Okay. No ECA, and again, I need to take this out. No corresponding professional designation. Let me see. Scroll down. Okay. Are you currently employed with the employer? No, as they've given him a full-time job offer. And I don't, I honestly can't recall. Let me just adjust this screen. I can't recall whether I showed this drop down or not. I don't think I did. So much like the trade certification, I've got it auto filtered. I've got a list of every single tier code. I'm not going to explain how I did that. It's actually really, really straightforward, but this solves a lot of issues with the data entry. So I've got every single tier code in there. And since I know every single tier code, I know what tier grouping they are. All right. So because AJ is a software engineer, I'm using code 21231. Okay. And again, I know what the skill level, and I'm using the left 3 characters, left 3 numbers for federal skilled trade. Doesn't come into consideration for this particular scenario, but it does in others. All right. So down to the rest of the data. So I'm saying he's worked for a foreign company, he's a software engineer, worked 30 hours. I'm saying is true. It is either outside Canada, which is this, or inside Canada under work permit. I use this to specify whether this person was working in Canada on a study permit or not. In this case, that isn't the case, so I can count it. And I'll scroll over here. And again, I mentioned in the previous case study, these calculation of hours is based on the time period. So how much did he work in the last 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 30, so on and so on. Okay, so it's all formula driven. So it saves me a lot of time in calculation actually. So it goes on and on. I also calculate the number of months too, and whether, if I just want to know the total number, I have that. But all this information is really helpful. All right. And I scroll down. And, this is key. Hourly wage job offer. He's job offers are $58 per hour. And it's going to be, his job offers is in Victoria, so which is the bottom option. All right, so let's look at the report now. So this is AJ score. So he's got 20 points for his work experience, which is the maximum. Again, that corresponds to, I think, page 53. And actually, just for sanity check, I'll just show you page 53. I'm going to stop bouncing around as often as the next scenarios, just because it does get a little confusing. So he's got 10 years of experience, so he's getting 20 points. See, right there. And I'm allocating 20 points. Again, all based on formulas. None of it was in Canada. He's getting 15 points for his credentials. And that is page, oops, wrong tab. That is it this page? Yeah, he's got a bachelor's degree, 15 points. All right, he's got 15 points for that. Scroll down, this is language score, minimum, CLB 7, so you get 20 points for that. No French. Okay, so this is key. He's being offered $58 per hour. I'm calculating 43 points. So let's go over to the BC PNP page. Over here, oops, missed it. $50 per hour. I'm saying he's got 43 points, according to this. And it's formula driven. So he's getting 43 points out of maximum of 55. The area of employment is outside of Greater Vancouver and Surrey. I didn't graduate in BC. I'm giving him 113 points, which matches exactly what was in the case study in the CPD session that I got this from. Okay, that's the first part. Let's look at the federal reports. Okay, the first section is the CR scoring. So, as I mentioned before, for H points is 80. Level education is 112, and that corresponds to a single person with a 3-year plus credential. First official language, I'm getting 96 points because we're right across the board. It's a CLB 7. Right? And skill transferability 13. So I'm giving him 300 points. Federal skilled worker, I'm giving him 63. Actually, I needed to correct that. He does have an arranged employment. I need to double check that. I think there's another field I need to key in. Doesn't qualify for skilled trade and doesn't qualify for Canadian experience class because none of his work was in Canada, and his tier grouping isn't in the federal skilled trade. So again, from the data entry, from this, I can get the BC PNP score plus the federal scores. All right. So I do apologize. I may have one or two errors in here, so I need to double check. But you see where I'm going with that. You have a single source of data, and you're generating all these reports. Okay, so next one is case study number 3. So forgot to mention something. Before I jump to case study number 3, I want to mention one thing about this particular case with Ajay. So firstly, I had to catch myself for a second in that in the federal report, I got I came up with a language score of 96, and that's because based on the IELTS score of 7 and 6.5, I'm getting the CRS scoring of 29, 16, and a 22. And because of that, the total is 96. Okay, so let me just shift this over. So total is 96. The other thing that I forgot to mention is this. Because I'm assuming that AJ is married, there's a lot of points that I haven't keyed in for based on these spousal factors. So there's a big chunk of points that are missing from this. So even though I've got a BC PNP score, a SRS score of 113, this goes to show that if somebody's married, or if somebody's married, you really need to understand the entire case. So because I'm missing that, the report for his CRS is not complete. So based on this example, I mean, like I said, I can match exactly what was shown in the CEPD, but with additional information, I can get a more complete picture under the federal programs. All right. So now on to case study number 3. So case study number 3. Marla is working as seafood packer in Kelowna. She's on open work permit as a spouse of a study permit holder, obviously both for nationals. She was a lawyer with over 8 years experience. She's been working in seafood processing plants since December 2020. She has a law degree with no ECA. She's only ranking 1565 an hour, and her lowest language score is CLB 8, which is pretty darn good actually. All right, so let me show you the data entry. So let's go over the data entry and the calculations for Marla. She's has an accompanying spouse because she's here on a spousal open work permit. Her language scoring, I'm using 888 and 6.5 to give her a minimum of a CLB 8. Okay. No French score, and these are her CRS score for her language. So she's getting 115. Okay, sorry about that. I need to clear out this column. I inserted it at one point in time, but it's not relevant anymore actually. Scroll down. Her birth date, I'm using September 20, 1998. She's got a master's degree because she's got a law degree. Wasn't in Canada. Okay. She doesn't have any type of trade designation at all. Okay. Actually, this should be LLB, but this is for another province. But just to avoid any confusion, legal, and these data entry fields are for the other reports that I've done, but I'll refresh those at a later date. And you can tell, like, if I asked the questions for every single province. So anyways, are you currently employed with an employer? The answer is yes. The NOC code, the tier code that I'm using is 95107. All right, so it's a level below express entry. Okay, so go down to work experience, and this is where the BC PNP really shines because express entry, obviously you can only use tiers 0 through 3. So this would be below that. Okay, so she was a lawyer, and the knock code I'm using is 41101. She's working full time. This was overseas, and this would be for a federal skilled worker. That's a number of hours within the last 10 years. Obviously, she may try to apply, but, with her credentials situation, I don't know. That might be a bit of a challenge. But anyways, that's a whole different topic. She's currently working at the seafood company for the last, I think it's 3 years. I think that was the scenario. Seafood processing since December, yeah, since December 2020. So I used that date, and I used the locked in date of November the 1st, just because. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me just play around with this a bit. And actually, I used the wrong year, so I'll use March 1st, 2023. I had the wrong year there. This is in Canada on a work permit in BC, tier type 5, and this is the number of work hours within, again, the blocks of time that I mentioned before. So last 12 years, and then getting experience class the last 3 years, and then BC. I forgot to mention. I think it's the last. I think they count up to, I think, 5, right? Let me actually. You know what? This is a good point. Let me double check. I think they count up to 5. Starting to forget some of these things. Yeah, 5 or more years, and I think the work duration, or the period of time, is within the last 10 years, I think. Is it 10? Yeah, pretty sure it was 10. I'll need to double check that. But anyways, okay, I'm getting really sidetracked now. It's getting kind of late too. Down here, this is where the fun is. She's getting paid $15.65 an hour, and it's outside of the Greater Metro Vancouver area. All right, and having spent either 1 year of education work experience outside of the Greater Vancouver area, the answer is true. All right, so that's the data entry. So again, everything's formally driven. I don't do anything else. And here's her score. Her score is 8. For her work, at least 1 year was in Canada, yes. Currently working for the employer, yes. Higher level of education, master's degree, 22. Scroll down, she got 25 points for her language ability. Its area of employment is outside of the Vancouver area again. She got 100 points. Based on that, I'll show you the federal scoring. And again, this is a highlight of the fact that I need more information for her spouse too. But currently, right now, because of what information we have available, and I just want to make sure I key that in properly. Yeah, a company spouse is for national. So currently, right now, she's got 341 CRS points. Federal skilled worker, she's got 67. And then federal skilled trade, the job code that she has isn't in one of these. And Canadian experience class, because it's a tier 5, is it? Yeah, I think it's a tier 5. She doesn't qualify for CEC. Again, even though, and actually this is why I use this as a double check so often. Even though I've got hours within the last 3 years within the bucket for Canadian experience class, like 3,500 hours, it doesn't qualify for Canadian experience class because I've got an additional filter looking at that tier code, right? So these are the number of hours, but I know this is the tier type 5, which is below CEC. All right. So again, with that data entry of this information, I keyed in to my one model, all these fields here, and including the salary, the permit, occupation, everything. I can automatically calculate the BC PNP score is 100, and I also have a scoring for all the federal programs too. Mind you, I developed this on my own, and if you have a package such as Case Easy, it automatically does a lot of this for you. But the reason why I did this is I wanted to calculate the BCP&P score, which actually Case Easy happens to have. But when I did this, I wanted the ability to quickly analyze any changes to, say, work experience or language, and not just for the federal scoring, but for the other provinces too. So at a later date, I'll be showing you the changes for everything else. All right. So that's it for case study number 3, and time to do case study number 4, the last one. So case study number 4. Before I get started, thanks for sticking it out with me until the very end. It's I think I'm gonna be almost at an hour, so I really do appreciate your time. And I've been wanting to do this for a while now because it's kind of validates the effort that I've put into this. All right, so case study number 4, and again, this is almost the same scenario as what Tiffany used, and I tweaked a little bit because I just wanted to show an additional calculation. So Fred's currently working Comox as a carpenter on an Open Spousal Work Permit. His wife is pursuing a Post-Graduate Diploma. He accumulated 1 year work experience with current employer as of November 2022. Prior to coming to Canada, he had 20 years of experience as a self-employed renovation contractor. This is interesting because that particular work experience should qualify under FST. This next sentence, this caught me. Fred completed a certificate program in fine woodworking at Selkirk College. When I first read that, I thought this was an equivalent of a trade cert. In the example calculation that Tiffany did, I don't think she included it. So I at first when I did this, I gave an extra 5 points, but I wound up taking it back out. Okay. Present wage is $32 an hour. CLB's score of 12, which is perfect. And the original score in the scenario and the CPD by Tiffany is 125. I added something here. I added the date of birth because I'm also calculating the CRS, but I'm adding the fact that Fred's a bit of a Renaissance man, and he can speak French. So in the original scenario, his score has 125, and it's going to be even higher now. All right. So let's look at the calculation. And this time I did it beforehand, so I don't have to pause it. Okay. So let's go up to the very top, and I'm going to move some things around because it is a little hard to find. So his name is Fred. He's the company spouse who's a foreign national. I did the language scoring a little different too. It mentioned CELPIP. I'm just scoring Fred 10 right across the board. And again, this calculation is based on a drop down. I accept 4 different languages. You just key in the language score, not the CLB level. Okay, here's where I'm deviating from the case study that Tiffany did. I'm saying Fred can speak French. He's well traveled. You enter in, I enter in a TCF score, and I'm using this as an equivalent of a very high score over here. This is the language chart, TCF. So what I've done is I'm giving Fred roughly a CLB 8 in French, right across here. Don't ask me why the numbers are the way they are, but for reading is 510, writing is an 8, so around here. Listening is a 500, so that's a 7, and speaking I gave a 10. All right, and again I'm just creating this for the scenario. Scrolling down, his birth date was in 1973. He's 49 years old. He doesn't get any points for for his CR score for age. I'm giving Fred a 1 year credential, and in Canada, in BC. I originally, like I said, I clicked on any trade, but I'm not giving Fred credit for 5 points for the, what is that called? The certificate program fine woodworking. In other words, when I first saw this, I thought, red seal, but no. Okay, so I took that out. Per knock code, you're currently with Fred is currently with the company. The knock code I'm using. Oh, I did it again. The tier code I'm using is 72310. Tier skill level is a 3, and again, this is driven by drop down of all the tier codes. Okay. I scroll down. So, oops. And his work experience, I'm saying he's got about roughly 20 years in the US and not in Canada. Oh, well, it really doesn't matter which country, but just to not confuse everybody. It's outside of Canada, so this is true. Since he wasn't here working on a study permit, so 30 hours a week. I'm just going to scroll over. Oh, yeah. So he last worked it back in 2020. So only this column, work experience, the last 5 years count. It wasn't. He's got no work experience in the foreign country in the last 3 years. That's why this value is essentially 0. All right. Fred has worked. Oh, did I do that wrong? Oops, sorry. Let me just pause that. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to change the date. That was from the case study number 3. So Fred is working at Comox Cabinets, just slightly over a year. He's a carpenter, same knock code. He's working in Canada on a work permit in BC. So that's why he's got these hours. All right. So the last one is from school trade. So federal school work the last 10 years. Okay. All right. So that I'll scroll down a bit. His hourly wage is $32 an hour, and it is outside of the Vancouver area. And as I mentioned, I need to move some of these cells around because I've got another data entry field about the qualifying job offer, and I put it way down here. So I'm going to move that around the next time I do another presentation. But that data entry basically covers everything. All right. So let's go look at the report. So Fred's got 20 points for his work experience. Currently working for the employer. He's getting 10 points. Let's see. I've got like 3 months here. I'm not sure why. 3 months last year. Oh, okay. Sorry. I coded this as December 2022. If I do 2021, this, and you see how dynamic this is. So this automatically goes up to 15 months. So let me just change that back. Actually, I miscoded this. So assuming that Fred's only got like 2 months of experience, that's, well, three months. That's why he doesn't get any points, because it's less for a year. But if I say oh, this is, and I don't think I have a rounding error, so I need to double check that. So this should be 15 months. Okay, 50 months, gets extra 10 points. Currently working for the employer. 1 year credential is only worth 5 points. It's in BC. And here's where he really shines. He's got 30 points for his language. And he's got another 10 points because Fred can speak French. And let me just show you that value really quick. Let me just navigate there. Language. Nope, that ain't it. I write it down, but I never remember where I put it. Page 57. Page 57. Language proficiency. Blah, blah. So language proficiency in both English and French, and the minimum is a CLB4 on both tests. So Fred scored really high, so that's why he got the additional 10 points. Right there. And again, I'm not keying anything, it's all formula driven. Okay, hourly wage for his $32 an hour, has got 17 points. Let's just go over to that page really quick. $32 an hour, 17 points. Again, it's a formula. First working in Comox, extra 15 points. He's been graduated 1 year certificate outside the Metro Vancouver, additional 10 points. So in Tiffany's case study, Fred got 125. I'm giving an additional 10 because Fred can speak French. I just added that scenario. So just wanted to show that my values line up to what was pre-presented in the CPD. Now, on to the federal report. So the CRS score, I'll scroll up. And again, I don't have the scoring because his wife is foreign national. So this would change things drastically. So Fred's got 363 points as is. In this particular case, it'll be good to know how his wife scores because she can be the principal applicant, vice versa. But because Fred is got such high language scores, maybe he's the one. But that's the type of an analysis this spreadsheet was designed to bring out. All right, 363 and the CRS score. Federal school workers got 67. Notice that the age, no points for age, and the federal school worker, no points for age for the CRS score. Federal school trade, okay. Fred's tier code is in 72310. So he's got 4,700 hours and 36 months because it has to be within the last five years. Okay, and again, this is automatically calculated. So I don't automatically take, I think Fred overall last 20 years. No, the spreadsheet automatically does that calculation for you. Language scoring again really high, so Fred received qualifying job offer. So he is possible to qualify for federal skill trade if they ever actually have one, because I think in 2022, I don't think there was a single FST draw. I don't think. I can't remember one. Okay, Canadian experience class. He's been I quoted it as 15 months, so he very high language score right across the board. So therefore, Fred can qualify for Canadian experience class too. So Fred's a bit of a unicorn. He scores really high right across the board. So there you go. From the same scenario that was presented in a BC PNP session, I could show how you can use one spreadsheet and with a whole bunch of formulas, and it dynamically calculates everything out for you. Like I mentioned already, there's a lot of systems out there that automatically calculate CRS. It's the most well-known. What's less well-known is the ability of these different systems to calculate a BC score. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. The next one I will revise is actually Ontario because I've got a pressing need for it. Everything's still coded to the old knock codes. So thanks for sticking it out with me. I really do appreciate this. So thank you for your time. And again, definitely watch if you're an RCIC this session. It would really help me. It helped me validate going through her video and her 4 case studies. I found it very easy to make sure that my calculations were correct in my Excel file. So if you're an RCIC, I highly recommend that you watch this session too, and I'll add the link to the bottom of the description because it is kind of long. Thank you very much for your time, and hopefully the next video I create will be on the Ontario PNP. I might make another video on ChatGPT. Actually, I'm kind of playing around with something, and but next few months you should be hearing my voice for a really exciting update that I'm doing for for something else. I'm really excited about that. So, anyways, thank you again. I will see you all soon. Bye.
A few moments later. A few moments later.